Let's buckle up and play one of our favorite games, which is being a Monday morning quarterback, as we analyze the drama in the Toronto real estate world. In this case, we're going to talk about the bankruptcy of the One, which is a very highly anticipated project at Bloor and Yonge that's been ongoing since 2015. Lots of buzz, lots of rumors about this thing. I'm going to go through the history of this project, what happened, what is likely going to happen, and some lessons learned for all of us. My name is Vassil, and I'm a real estate broker right here in the city of Toronto, where I help families and investors navigate the drama of what our real estate market seems to be bringing us every single day. Here are a few of the original renderings when this project was launched. It's located at Yonge and Bloor on the southwest corner. As you can see, this structure is very tall, and they've actually applied for multiple additions to floors since its inception, and I believe which was 2015. It's a pretty ambitious project, a cool one at that. I think it's actually really neat. The design is very interesting, and it's a pretty nice addition to the Toronto skyline as far as I'm concerned. The biggest criticism here is that first, the developer was inexperienced and they took on or bit off more than they can chew, and that they sold the units way too cheap. Now, I'm going to talk in depth about both of those, except I'm not gonna crap on the developer because, listen, kudos to them for actually trying this. I mean, it takes guts to go and build something like this. Now, you will have to excuse the quality of this price list right here. I could not find a better one, and I can't really make out all the numbers, but I'm just gonna focus on the ones that I can make out. So up here we have the cheaper and most popular units that were up for sale, and I'm getting a price of about $1,300 per square foot, or 1322. Let's call it 13 to 1500 bucks per square foot for these smaller 1 and 2 bedrooms. Now, obviously, it will depend on which floor you're on, what your exposure is, and then as you go into the upper tower suites, we're getting at $2,000 per square foot. Remember, this is back in 2015, so it may not seem as expensive now, but back then it was expensive. But although I don't think it was expensive enough in order to pencil this project and make it work. And then once you get into the high-rise suites right here, you're getting it like 2,500 bucks per square foot. And when you get into the penthouses, the prices there are just completely insane. So I think this is where they kind of got in trouble. They allocated too many penthouses and they assumed they would sell at whatever the price per square foot worked out to be, and it didn't. After COVID and the inflation and the interest rates we have now, obviously looking at, 1,500 bucks a square foot, it doesn't seem that expensive, but you have to remember that was pretty much unheard of in 2015. So you would think back then with those sales, they would have had the firepower and the cash reserves to get this thing going. Well, based on what I'm seeing on social media and different things people are saying, effectively they took on a construction facility that would allow them to start building, but they didn't actually have the funds to actually go all the way until completion. So that's kind of like your red flag number one. But again, with a project like this, you would probably expect something like this because this is not a big builder that's done it before. So probably they're not going to be super well capitalized. So it's kind of par for the course. Another unverified piece of information that's been floating around is that about 70% of the units were sold years ago, but only represent 50% of the revenue needed to sell out the entire building. And the problem is that they can't sell the larger units, the ones that are extremely expensive, way above $2,000 per square foot. And they started building anyway with the hope that once this thing is off the ground and getting built up, it would be easier to sell those really expensive units. And by the way, this is not a new tactic. Developers do this all the time, where they will keep some of the nicest and biggest and most expensive units for later. They're not going to be released at the launch, and usually they will get more money for them. I think part of the issue here is, based on the information I have, is that they probably have way too many of these high-priced units, which is probably going to make it even that more difficult to sell them. You're not talking about 1 or 2, you're talking about a lot more. It's also very interesting that's been pointed out is there's not a single lender on here that's actually a Canadian lender, aside from their actual lending partners or investors in the deal, but there are no Canadian lenders. So in industry, that is sometimes also seen as a red flag. So there you have it. Now, what's interesting is this project has been riddled with drama for years, and here's just an article that came out literally 1 week before they went into receivership, and this is based on their Chinese state-owned lender that backed this project from the early days. This Chinese state owner is actually suing Dentons, which is the law firm that they used on this specific project. But here's what actually happened. Court filings allege that in 2016, the developer and Ms. Coco, a road paving magnate who co-founded Bridging Finance, the private debt lender that collapsed in 2021, were looking for funding to get their condo project up and running, and turned it to this Chinese lender for financing. After negotiations, they agreed to advance $213 million as a contractor loan to fund phase 1 of the project's development. By June of 2021, however, the project's first debt repayment to the Chinese lender had come due and was not paid. And in response, the Chinese lender had hired an insolvency lawyer to investigate what was actually happening here. The criticism is this bridging finance lender, because who was a private lender that was part of this project to begin with, and then obviously no Canadian lenders would touch this project. And then now here we are with investigations with the Chinese lenders saying that the law firm breached this fiduciary duty according to court documents. Now, based on where the project is right now, I did some back of the envelope napkin math. So I think the gross floor area is 922,000 square feet, and it's expected to cost about just over $2.1 billion to complete this thing. Now, let's assume take out common elements, and then there's going to be discrepancies between retail space, hotel space, and all these different things. Back of the envelope napkin math, it looks like to finish this thing and to break even, you would need to get about $2,500 per square foot. Again, this is a very rough number. It could be less, could be more, but just ballparking it. And I think there's still some optimism that they could potentially do okay here if they restructure the debt. Somebody's going to have to take a haircut, likely people that bought into this project early on. I don't know, maybe they're going to cancel those purchase agreements and they're going to be offered back to the original purchasers, but at a higher price. That's one common way of trying to make up the shortfall. Who knows what they're going to do, but that's what it's looking like numbers wise. Now, the one is not going to be the first or last development that goes into receivership and the GTA. In real estate, cash crunches are pretty much one of the most common ways projects go under. And just to refresh your memory, Crestford was the last developer that basically put the playbook out in terms of what actually happens with these types of projects. There's still a lot of appetite for the city of Toronto, and there's going to be a developer that's going to want to come in and swoop in and finish this off and hopefully restructure the debt where they can finish it and make it a profitable project. This is going to come at the cost of other people losing money, but effectively this is where we're at. And just to refresh your memory, what ended up happening with Crestford is in 2020 February, they made headlines when it was revealed that their former president Maria Athanasoulis filed a 33-page wrongful dismissal alleging that Crestford had a cash crisis and was failing to pay its contractors and real estate brokers. So this is effectively how it kind of starts and it trickles down. So I think this moment was actually earlier for the one, probably in 2021 when they failed to pay their Chinese lender. So one thing to keep in mind with projects like this, based on what we learned from Crestford, at least what I learned from the ground floor, from the Crestford buildings that were completed, you have to be very cognizant of cost-cutting measures that may happen for whoever is going to take over these projects and finish them. That is a real risk that will be borne by whoever owns in these buildings, and something not to be taken lightly. If you like this content, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.